Welcome to the Up Arrow Podcast with William Harris, featuring top business leaders sharing strategies and resources to get to the next level. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hey everybody, William Harris here. I'm the founder and CEO of Element, and I'm the host of this podcast where I feature experts in the direct-to-consumer industry sharing strategies on how to scale your business and achieve your goals. I also have a massive sunburn because I went to a baseball game this weekend and did not bring suntan lotion. So that's fun. Today, I have a really fun guest, though. He is serial entrepreneur Jonathan Beskin, built his first company, which is a women's lifestyle subscription box, from a pre-revenue idea to over $60 million in revenue in under 5 years. He's an investor in multiple private companies and startups. He has twice been featured in the prestigious Inc. 5000 list. Beskin is also a digital advertising and e-commerce expert. He often speaks at conferences and academic institutions, and he holds an MBA in finance from Florida Atlantic University. Jonathan, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Hope the sunburn is not feeling too bad. I was at the Miami Formula One Grand Prix this weekend and got a little sunburn on my neck as well. You probably can't see it, but
no, that's good. You got to get a little sunburn when it gets nice out, right? Before we jump into the questions, I do want to at least mention that this episode is brought to you by Element. Element is an award-winning advertising agency optimizing e-commerce campaigns around profit. In fact, we've helped 13 of our customers get acquired, with the largest one selling for nearly $800 million. And we were ranked as the 12th fastest growing agency in the world by Adweek. Before we get started, too, I also want to mention, Jonathan, I believe it was Scribe Media that put us in touch with each other. Is that right?
It is, yeah. So Scribe is kind of a full service a book writing package or book publishing operation. And they helped me with a number of elements of my book, including PR and marketing. And they did put this together, and excited to be here, excited to be connected with you.
That's awesome. If you guys check out scribemedia.com, really appreciate them putting us in touch. But on to the fun stuff, Jonathan. Building your business, 0 to 60 million. That's a massive feat for anybody. You did it without taking on any kind of capital or equity or anything along those lines. What was the passion behind this? Why did you say, I'm going to start, this business, SinglesSwag from the ground zero? What made you say this is the business idea that I want to run with?
Yeah, well, it's pretty a loaded question. And I think there are a number of variables. I think that I always had a desire to be an entrepreneur, to change my life. I always had this kind of toxic, really paralyzing anxiety for most of my life that prevented me from taking risks, from doing anything that would be anything outside of a traditional career path, which is really what I followed before starting this business. I had about a 10-year career in finance, but really the idea was born out of loneliness. So I was a single dad in 2015, and I had just completed a business school. It was kind of an executive MBA program at FAU here in South Florida. And a lot of the curriculum in that program was based on case studies, like Harvard Business Review case studies. And a lot of it had to do with the recurring revenue. So companies like Birchbox, studying companies like Netflix. And I decided about halfway through that program, when I originally started the program, to make myself more attractive to prospective employers, I really wanted to start a company. And I was sitting at home one night, single, looking at social media, looking at all the other friends and family out having a great time and posting about it. And I hadn't gotten a gift in a while. And I realized that single people may feel the same way, and there wasn't really a service that was for them. And that's kind of how the idea for SinglesSwag was born.
I love the story. I don't love that you felt lonely, but I love that you took that feeling and turned it into something that was, going to just not just solve a problem for you, but solve a problem for a lot of people. And I think that we can all relate to that feeling of loneliness. Sometimes it can come from social media, which is really funny. You think social media is meant to make us feel connected, and very often, even if you already are very connected in an offline world or even in an online world, you could feel very lonely, just seeing somebody else do something different that you wanted to do or whatever's going on social media. And yeah, that's a tough thing. But you turned that then into a business. Um, why, you and I think you ended up talking about this a little bit, but why single women? You focused this on mostly going after that demographic. What was the reason for that?
Yeah. Well, I didn't know this at the time, but more than half of the US and the world population of adults over the age of 18 is single or unmarried. So more women in particular are making more of a conscious decision to stay single longer. More people are divorced, obviously. So it really is a large market segment internationally. And no one was focusing on marketing to this segment. And a lot of times, single people feel stigmatized, and they may not feel as worthy as their married peers. And whether I subscribe to that or not, I think that's a reality about the emotions tied to being single, and it is such a large segment. And the subscription box beauty kind of women's lifestyle space at the time was a crowded space. And there are some pretty serious, significant venture-backed competitors that were spending a lot of money on advertising every day. And in order to compete and scale at the pace that we did, we really needed to have a differentiator. And I'm convinced in this case that it was that singles differentiator and having a little bit of an edge in our advertising. Our most effective piece of ad copy historically is when you're the love of your own damn life. And that sold millions of dollars of revenue, tens of thousands of subscriptions just on that piece of ad copy being used across different creative and different types of ad sets, primarily on social media. And the reason why we focus on women specifically, because when I had the idea initially, I thought I would focus on people like me as well. So men and women. I really quickly identified in doing market research that women were really more of the consumers for subscription boxes. And at the time in 2016, I was convinced that in order to scale a brand, you really needed to cultivate a community on Instagram. Instagram was really the channel at that time. And I thought that that would be easier to accomplish by focusing on women. So women were the consumers for these boxes. I thought Instagram was really the key channel, and decided to focus exclusively on women. And we've really stayed focused on women the entire time.
Yeah, that's smart. Doing the customer research, I think, is something that a lot of people maybe fail to do. And I don't think that you necessarily always have to do that before you jump into it. Sometimes I think that, we put so much of an emphasis on getting things perfect before launching. And sometimes you just got to launch and just see what happens, right? You can make all kinds of guesses as to what's going to happen. Until you launch, you don't really know what's going to work. But there is something to be said for, okay, once you've got things up and running, digging into the research, who's actually buying, and seeing what kind of data and analytics you have internally, but also what's out there externally to kind of support different hypotheses, and at least being educated about, what the goal is and what the intent is to find that product market fit. Because, I'm sure that you've seen this as well. If you run an ad and you don't have the right product market fit with an ad, it doesn't matter how great the video is or how great the ad copy is or the landing page. And you can do all the CRO in the world that you want to do. But if it's not the right group of people that you're selling to, and it's not the right product or offer for them at the right price, that ad's going to be completely ineffective. So I like that you did that. How did you go about doing this research? What were you doing to figure this out?
Yeah, and I totally agree with you, by the way, that launching is really such an important step. And I think entrepreneurs really, and I was guilty of this myself, really tell themselves so many reasons why to not launch. They need to get the perfect. They need people who want to start subscription boxes, for example, tell me that they need to design the box first, or they need to get all the products right. Really, marketing is the key. And really, there's not a lot of barriers to entry with this type of business. So if you have a website set up, if you're able to advertise, it's pretty simple to get everything going. And we were able to quickly identify that the cost to acquire customers was going to be profitable and scalable. And I was self-taught in digital advertising. I kind of scaled the company myself from $20 a day to over 10,000 a day consistently for around 5 years, and really was focused on a lot of testing and a lot of variation in what we were doing. Like I said, it took a lot of thoughtfulness, kind of being obsessed in a way with the even things like the ad copy and the imagery we were doing and getting it right to what was going to be effective. It was kind of a different market environment in digital advertising at that time during kind of the peak and the really solid upward trajectory in my business. But it's saying I think I may have gone off and lost the initial question you had, but hopefully head in the right direction.
I do that all the time. Just the idea, it's like you kind of start running down a path and, just excited about what you're talking about. And I think you hit it. It's just the idea. It's like, how did you go about doing this initial customer research? And you mentioned something about, like this healthy obsession. And I know that's something that you and I talked about before. It's like, what do you mean by a healthy obsession? What does that mean? Because I feel like typically when you hear the word obsession, healthy doesn't end up falling within that same sentence. What's a healthy obsession, and what was your healthy obsession?
Yeah. So for me in general, I tend to obsess, and I talk to a lot of other people that tend to obsess, and a lot of that obsession that I call it is driven by anxiety. So I just as an adult, as a human, have an elevated baseline level of anxiety. So it's really about figuring out the best way to channel that energy. So I know that's how I was kind of born that way. I feel like it's genetic, it's biological. How can I keep that from being toxic? How can I keep that from catastrophizing, from taking something that happens in my business or my life and letting it be the end of the world? The way that it's been effective for me, and I think really help scale my business, change my life, and really improve my way of operating personally, is by channeling that energy into a healthy obsession. So things like thinking about my business from every angle and asking myself all these questions in my head about what we could be doing next, what we anticipate our competitors are doing, what is going to be the next product we want to launch, what more could I be doing? So it's kind of an immersion into this whole way of thinking and this whole way of operating based on knowing who I am. And I think anxiety, mental illness, depression are prevalent in today's society. I think there's definitely been a movement to being more transparent and talking about it more. Yeah. That's something that I'm definitely trying to do. It's definitely been a struggle. And this is really a learned practice because I was not always this way at all. I've struggled since really my early teen years with this type of thing. And I would say in more ways than not in my life, it's been toxic, and it's been something that's prevented me from being as happy as I could be, from achieving in my corporate or professional career as much as I could achieve. I think what I learned in the course of building the company SinglesSwag and acquiring another company, which I bought, Paradise Delivered, was that I really had the ability to channel this energy into a way that was not only going to help me live a better life, but help me financially and help me be a better professional and an entrepreneur.
Well, and I think where I like where you went with this, with the idea of, you said, knowing who you were, and the high anxiety that you had. I've got ADHD diagnosed and everything here. And anybody who knows me knows that I absolutely have, and that's not a misdiagnosis. And I think that one of the things that's interesting about mental health, to what you just called out, is that there is this broad spectrum of things that can affect us. And while not to make light of the mental health issues that they are, there's definitely need for treatments, medications, therapy, whatever, to try to help us to get out of any kind of bad cycles that might be going on with us. They're also gifts. to a point as well. And so I think that there's a lot of things that we can use those to our benefits. And so, my ADHD has been used to an extensive benefit in my own business and even personal life of just the excitement and creativity that I bring to different situations. And to your point, like what you just said about, anxiety, you're going to see problems that my ADHD brain would never come up with because I'm thinking about all these other things, and you're able to see things that I'm not going to obsess over. And I think Steve Jobs was a bit that way. If I remember correctly, I saw at least an article about him where he obsessed over the amount of roundedness that they had on these modals or pop-up boxes or something, where it's like it was not pixel perfect, and you're thinking why does he care so much about that compared to all it allowed him to make this product that was significantly better than I think at least I'm a big Apple fan, so significantly better than everything else that was out there. And so I think sometimes we or even let's even say depression can oftentimes be a really great lead in for musicians who write some of the most incredible music during those stages of their life as well. And I think sometimes we're too focused on maybe normalizing everything, and instead of just getting everything to this baseline of deadness or vanilla, there is something to be said for allowing ourselves to be a little bit of these natural things that we are, making sure that we're at least still in a safe and in a healthy way, but appreciating the gift that it can be as well.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the comparison to Steve Jobs. I'm a big Apple fan as well, though I will say that Apple, I really attribute, my business is not on the upward trajectory that it once was. And a lot of the advertising dynamics that have been affected from an acquisition perspective in my business have been impacted by some changes that Apple made. And I'm not an
Sure.
Apple hater. I mean, there's a lot of variables when you're a business owner, as you know, that are out of your control. And it's really about being able to adapt. And I think that's where some of this healthy obsession can come in even more, and really look at these challenges that come up and these variables that are external and out of your control in a way that are going to benefit you in the long run, and that can help even further fuel that healthy obsession.
Yeah. And so I think this is a good way to talk a little bit about the book that you wrote here that's coming out really soon here. I forget the exact date. What date is that coming out?
So it's there's actually not an exact date. It's likely going to be late August.
Late
So it's
August. Okay.
definitely third quarter of
Third quarter.
2023, and I'm very excited about it. But yeah, that's actually within a week away, but very soon.
Well, and so the book's called Least Likely Millionaire. And I think the thing that I appreciate that is you're very open and transparent throughout this book about all of these things that we're talking about, and then more. What inspired you? You already have this business that's doing really well. What made you say, I need to turn this into a book? What was going through your head?
Yeah. So, and the full title is The Least Likely Millionaire: How to Succeed When Everyone Expects You to Fail. And I think that the title is impactful to me, and so is the subtitle, because really I think the story of my life and my business was that no one really supported this idea. A lot of people thought that it was a joke. A lot of people thought that it was never going, and really there wasn't a lot of basis for that. So the people that were telling me that my whole life, whether it was friends, family, colleagues, coworkers, counterparts in business school, weren't doing that from a place. And I think a lot of people who give entrepreneurial advice, or people that have not had the credibility of having a professional success as an entrepreneur, really share ideas with people that haven't done it either, they're often going to get met with negative feedback and negative things that aren't really based in reality necessarily, or based on a knowledge base that comes from being a practitioner in these things. But I use that again as fuel. And I think that I've really been proactive of sharing my story on social media, and in particular TikTok. And I've created some TikToks that have gone viral. And this is not me looking to promote that necessarily, but as a result of that and kind of sharing my story in the TikTok format based on trends and different, music and putting some text behind it, which I feel like I'm old when I do that versus like my 14-year-old son when he does it, because I'm not as quick to put these TikToks together, and I'm trying to get the right apps and trying to get the ones that make it easier. I'm 42. I don't feel that old when it comes to technology, but it's not that easy, and it's kind of tedious to put some of these things together. But anyways, they've gone viral. A lot of people started to reach out to me, and people started to ask me more questions about my story. People started to ask me to consult with them. People started to ask me what was unique about my journey. And I felt strongly that there was a story to tell. And I think there are some things that happened in my youth that were unique. I think that there were things that happened in my business journey, my entrepreneurial journey, particularly at the beginning in the early stages where I was overtly told specific reasons why I was never going to work around raising money. And I think there's a unique story around the way that I built and scaled the business by getting to the revenue and profitability we got to in a crowded space without raising money for a lot of it while I had a full-time job. So for the first 2 years that I was starting SinglesSwag and building SinglesSwag, even to a point where I was making more money from the business as kind of a solo entrepreneur than I was in my corporate career, I kept that corporate job and I literally didn't sleep. And I literally didn't watch TV. And I prioritized taking care of my son, but I really made a lot of sacrifices. And I think I made sacrifices that often aspiring entrepreneurs I talk to aren't always willing to make. Like, I didn't really go out with friends. I lost touch with friends. I think that now I've come out the other side of that. That can be sometimes healthy and unhealthy to kind of do that. I think in some ways, I fueled or furthered my own loneliness. I mean, I went from starting a business out of being lonely to being lonely sometimes as an entrepreneur. What's different, though, is that my life has completely changed. I'm in a totally different financial position. I had some game-changing events happen during the COVID-19 pandemic. And the book really talks about my entire business journey and my entire journey as a human from growing up the way I grew up through scaling the business, along with some actionable tips and takeaways for starting a business, through kind of the peaks and the highs of the business,
Sure.
To the cycle that we're in now, where the business is not as strong and not growing at the same rate. Because we're not able to acquire customers at the cost that we were during the peak of the business. And I talk about how I've made some operational adjustments and pivots to counteract that. Because we were always acquiring so many new subscribers for SinglesSwag and then Paradise Delivery, the other business that I bought, that we weren't as worried about churn and about this dynamic of losing customers in a recurring revenue or subscription-based business model. So now, obviously, that becomes more of a concern. So it's kind of a full evolution of my life and my business journey as an entrepreneur.
I mean, it reminds me of the saying, and I might butcher it, but something along the lines of, the people who say that something can't be done should get out of the way of those who are doing it. And it's just that idea that it sounds like, a lot of people were saying, oh, that can't be done, or you're never going to be a success with that. And it was like, hey, just get out of the way because I'm actually doing it. Right. And I like that. So you had the mentality and the fortitude of the mind to say, well, I actually still, I'm going to pursue this. And I had to laugh a little bit about what you said about, treating loneliness by becoming an entrepreneur, which as an entrepreneur, I can tell you that's about the worst way to treat loneliness because it is very difficult to be an entrepreneur. It is a very lonely, alienating feeling. A lot of times your friends can't relate. Your family can't relate. You can't even discuss problems that you might have had with them. It's like, hey, we had this big thing happen or whatever. And it's, it's just on a different level and whatever. And so it's very difficult from that. But I'm curious. I want to ask you, you mentioned that, there's some stories from your childhood that you think relate to this. Tell us, like, what's one of the things that you think from your childhood that has helped you to become who you are today, or and make this business a success?
Yeah. So I think a lot of it is just born out of the idea of the least likely millionaire. And just to briefly expand on that, I think it helps to answer the question. But really, I struggled with mental illness since my early teenage years. And a lot of that was driven by events that happened when I was a child, about the way that I was treated by my father, about him, going to another state. And there was a particularly significant event that happened at my bar mitzvah. So I kind of grew up Jewish, and I had a bar mitzvah. It's kind of a coming of age at 13, and a lot of planning went into it, a lot of studying went into it. And my parents had a very toxic dynamic when I was growing up. My dad moved to another state when I was 8, and my dad got up in front of the synagogue, the kind of gathering place, and made a speech in front of all my friends, family, speaking negatively about my mom. And it was this one thing that I never felt cool growing up, never felt worthy. Spent a lot of time alone because I was an only child, and my mom worked kind of an 8 to 6 job as a teacher and then aftercare every day. And I thought that I could use this event to kind of redeem myself in some ways. It ended up being even more embarrassing and even more catastrophic to my self-worth and social. And I kind of spiraled a little bit from there. In my teenage years, I got into a lot of trouble. I got into a lot of fights, experimented with drugs. I had a little bit of a better experience in college, but then I went through some serious turmoil as an adult as well. And I ended up actually being hospitalized as a teenager. And I talk about this in the book, for major depression and anxiety. But then I was also, about 4 years before I started the business, I was hospitalized as an adult because I felt so hopeless. And if anyone is just has experienced depression that's listening or watching this, you just know the overwhelming feelings and negativity that come along with depression and depressive episodes. And it got to a point where I even agreed to electroconvulsive therapy treatments that could have impacted my brain in different ways and could have done. Fortunately, didn't. I feel just as sharp and just as quick, and I'm not even sure the impact they had. I mean, it was definitely something that was sedating at the time, and doing that. And I'm willing to talk openly about that. And people that know me, prior to this book coming out, or when the book comes out, this is something that I haven't publicly shared. It's not the type of thing that you really put out there, but I think it speaks to, this whole least likely millionaire. When I started this business, and after that happened, I had no money. I started this business without raising money, getting to the level we did with $2,000, making the sacrifices that I needed to make things happen. And I'm convinced that millions of individuals could have had this idea for a subscription box for single women. It's not like there's, like I was saying, a lot of barriers to entry or a lot of overhead expense that go into starting this type of business. That's what's actually very attractive about it. It's also attractive that it's really the type of business you can do from anywhere. And you can outsource a lot. But I think so many people could have taken this idea and not executed, not gone to 60 million plus in under 5 years, been in the top 200 of the Inc. 5000, a full page article in Inc. magazine, and really a life-changing success and redemption from really the darkest and most helpless, hopeless place.
Well, I thank you for being brave enough to talk about it. That is not an easy thing to talk about. And I think that there's a lot of people who are going to be listening that are going to be very thankful for that as well, because a lot of people that are struggling with that, a lot of people who are, let's say, actual entrepreneurs right now, and entrepreneurs, people who want to become an entrepreneur and are nervous or scared of putting themselves out there, maybe feeling hopeless as well. And it's encouraging to see that you pursued this, and it wasn't a straight line. I'm sure this wasn't a straight line of success where you just said, okay, great, I started, and every day it was incrementally better. And you likely ran into some major ups and downs. I know that you had told me before when we talked that you've taught yourself a lot, and you've become an expert in many facets of the business. But in any time that we become an expert at something, that means that we likely went through several rounds of failures and learned what not to do as well. And tell me about some of those things. Tell me about maybe one of the biggest issues that you ran into, that you're like, another moment of just saying, like, probably feeling like, let's give up. This is pointless. What am I doing? Wasting my time here. And how you pushed through that.
Yeah, lots of those moments, and I feel confident in kind of the expertise that I've cultivated and built, but it wasn't easy, and I'm still not perfect or close to that by any means as an entrepreneur. There's things that happen every day, even though my business is much more mature now and kind of we've built an infrastructure. There's lots of challenges, and I think for me, one of the biggest things that happened was I was really in need. I mean, I didn't believe in myself. I still have to pinch myself sometimes that I even achieved this, and I even got to the level of success that I did, because when I had this idea and when I shared it and I began to kind of execute at the very beginning, I would have never have imagined that we would have gone there. And I think a lot of it had to do with hard work. A lot of it had to do with market timing and kind of different things that were happening, economic conditions, other things like that were fortunate. I don't think it would have happened without both of those things and a number of other variables coming together. The times, and there were definitely times when I wanted to give up. And I called my mother, who's really been my only confidant, was also my first employee, my business. And I kind of talk about that in the book, about how I really did the job of 20 people when I had a full-time corporate job. And I kind of hired my mother as someone that I could really trust unconditionally as my first employee. But I had a conversation with someone that was based in a similar kind of geographic area where I live, and they had scaled a similar business, so an e-commerce recurring revenue subscription service that ended up at the time, this was around the peak of their company, was dwarfed. I mean, they may have had 7,000 shipments a month. At our peak, we were over 50,000 shipments a month. So it turns out that in the end, we really eclipsed what they did. But the individual I spoke with, who I really respected, really told me all the reasons. And a lot of it, I feel like, was stereotypical business preconceptions or really misnomers about starting a business. So that I needed to raise money, that I was not going to be able to be successful. And he also told me something that a lot of people told me with this business in particular, is that a straight single guy knows nothing about single women, is not going to have credibility when it comes to marketing a business for single women, and is not going to be able to scale a subscription box for single women. That if I wanted to scale, I had no choice but to bring on a woman that was going to help do that, lend to the credibility. And ultimately, I really feel lucky I didn't listen, because I still own 100% of the business. I ended up understanding this brand and the marketing messages that resonate, although not being a single woman, better than anyone else. I mean, I have nothing against digital agencies, and we've tried to work with some digital agencies, but ultimately, no one really understood the brand like I understood the brand, and no one did that. And I'm convinced that so people, and that conversation really had an impact, and it really had me down. And that was just one of multiple really blunt feedback from people that I really looked up to at the time, that told me all the reasons why this was never going to work. And that's one thing. Fortunately, I didn't listen, but we've also had some pretty catastrophic things happening in business. I mean, we're shipping a physical product. We've had full truckloads of our boxes when we were at our peak. We're shipping over 50,000 boxes a month. We've shipped over 2.5 million boxes total to over 300,000 customers. We had a whole truckload of shipments get completely lost by a pretty well-known, kind of international postal carrier. I definitely have learned a lot when it comes to employees and managing employees, who to trust. And I think I've learned a lot about myself throughout the course of this. And, because of the way I grew up and having a dad that I couldn't even trust. And I think it's difficult for me to trust anyone. And I think that somewhat, it's incredibly limiting as an entrepreneur when you're growing a business to do that. And I think it just reminds me of the Steve Jobs comment you met. Not that in any way I'm comparing myself to Steve Jobs. And
I already did, so you're safe.
Yeah. But what I would say, what resonated with me about what you shared about Steve Jobs was that I'm a perfectionist, and I cared so much about this business. And when it started to take off and we started to get customers, I wanted everything to be perfect. And I think what I realized over time, particularly when it comes to things like customer service, I was doing everything. So I was sourcing product. I was doing the advertising. I was responding to customer service direct message on social media and emails. And I just needed to come to terms with the fact that not everything can be perfect. And there are certain things that as a business owner and as a leader that I needed to let go in order to get to the next level. This business would have never gotten to 60 million plus if I would have continued to operate that way. I couldn't get that. But at the same time, if I were to go in at any given time to our customer service portal, and I love our employees, we have a very tenured team now. I'm very confident what they do. Are they answering things the way that I would answer them? Not all the time. There's some nuance to some of the inquiries we get. There's some ability for them to do it, and it may not be the same. But is it okay? Yes, it's okay. And you can't be in control of every element, particularly when you have a very quickly scaling business.
Have you ever heard of the term hyperthymesia? It's a disorder. I believe it affects like 7 people in the world, right? Very, very few, but it's essentially where they remember every detail of every day of their entire lives. And while some of us think, oh man, that would be a dream to remember everything, the reality is it's very debilitating, right? Because now you almost don't have the ability to function anymore. And I think of that being the same way of like, you're a diamond in the rough in the idea that you were able to learn as many different facets of the business as you were and be proficient and excellent at them. That's not true for most people. And I'd say sometimes that can almost be to your detriment where you can learn anything as quickly as you can, because then you never find the need to almost, outsource or get somebody the opportunity to do it. But I like what you said though, about how getting to a point where you're okay with certain things being at different levels. It reminds me of a phrase that I've always appreciated, which was everything you say yes to, you're saying no to something else. And so if you say yes to, digging deeper into, the paid ads for your own brand, that means you're saying no to thinking about the, logistics of it or whatever it might be, right? Like you're saying no to these other things because there's a give and take and you can only do so much and not everything can be perfect, like you said. And for me personally, one of the ways, because I'm as a typical entrepreneur and founder, I think that we can all sometimes end up that way a little bit in our minds. I implemented EOS traction, if you're familiar with that, and
I'm
being able to
EO member. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you know what I'm talking about, and being able to outline what that vision is has enabled me to be able to step back a lot more in my own business and allow the people on my team to make decisions that would align with the direction of what I want to have happen. And sometimes they'll just absolutely blow me out of the water. And I think I never would have solved it that way. but I really like the way you solved it because I wouldn't have thought about it that way. And so I think that's a really good thing though that you've talked about, being able to, share some of that burden with the people on your team.
Yeah, well, I'm happy for you that you were able to implement that, and that kind of eased and made things more efficient and identified or really empowered people on your team. I think in some ways, even some of my existing mental health, because by no means, I mean, I'm definitely improved. I definitely have figured out a different way of thinking. I definitely have leveraged these healthy obsessions to channel this energy in a much more positive way that's been life changing and amazing. But I still have a lot of insecurities, and I still have a lot of anxiety and issues that prevent me from even sometimes implementing things like EOS and doing these things that could genuinely and in a meaningful way improve my business, maybe even improve my life. And I think I've only been a business owner a short time. And I think it's a compelling story from where I've come from to where I've gotten. But the journey is definitely still ongoing. And I have a lot more learning to do and a lot more improving that I can continue to do as well.
I love the honesty of that, and like we're all on a journey, and what we're working through and what we think is the right thing right now. We're going to learn more about. Oh, there's actually maybe a better way to do this or that in the future, and I think that's a good thing, and it's encouraging that we actually have the opportunity to continue learning. I uh, I also want to say that we're getting close to the end here, and I want to make sure that I get into what's a what's a book that you highly recommend people reading that was maybe very influential to you.
Yeah. So the book that I would, and I haven't read it recently, so I'm not sure, but I was actually on a plane roughly 10 years ago. I started my business. Now it's been roughly 7 years. That was really a catalyst in a way to me getting to the place I am, along with some other variables of starting a business and changing my life. Was the 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss.
Mm,
I think that Tim
great book.
Ferriss is a unique individual and
Absolutely.
entrepreneur and podcast host and author of other books and national bestsellers. So I think the lifestyle in that book really resonated with me. I mean, fortunately, as I alluded to a little bit, the type of business that I set up and the type of business that I like and seeing myself investing in, getting more involved in the future, potentially founding more businesses, are businesses that don't require a physical storefront, that don't require, a lot of these big overhead requirements or build outs or really heavy employee businesses that are easy to outsource a lot of the functions, because I'm very attracted to a lifestyle where I can be in my home office every day. I can be traveling the world with the people I love. I could be involved in my son, who's a big lacrosse player, and kind of travel with him and all that. So I think that book really just hit a nerve with me that things were possible and that I could kind of change my way of thinking. And I think, I was just conditioned from a young age that I needed to follow a certain path, that I needed to go to college, which I am a proponent of. And I needed to get a job and a corporate job and, what I studied and kind of how I operated, even from a personal life perspective, that I was conditioned to, get married and have a family. And I'm very happy I have my son, and everything in life kind of happens for a reason. But I think, I just was conditioned to do all these things. And definitely from a career perspective, very grateful and thankful that I kind of broke through that, along with helps from that book and other things that I experienced, and was able to create a different lifestyle for myself.
It's a great book. One of my favorites as well. Read a lot of Tim Ferriss's stuff. There's so much more that I'd want to unpack with you. And I wish we could keep going, but I also need to be respectful of your time here as well. So it's just weird, kind of a cliffhanger there to end with everything that you just said and to not follow up on it. But I also like to end with a little bit of fun. Where you ever play the game Boulder Dash? Do you remember the game Boulder Dash?
I do. Love that game.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a random word. I want you to make up a definition for fun. This is on the spot, so I haven't given you any preparation on this. But you're going to give me a definition of what you think. You're going to try to convince me and all the listeners that this is absolutely what this word means. The word is snickersnee. It is SNICKERSNEE. Snickersnee. What is the definition of snickersnee, Jonathan?
So you can't use it in a sentence or give me the language of origin or anything like that.
Let me see what I got here. Let's see if there's anything. I will tell you, it's apparently from the 1700s. That's about the most that I could give you without giving anything away.
I was kidding. It was kind of twofold. I was kidding. I was trying to buy myself a little more time. But yeah, so snickersnee. Is that correct? Am I pronouncing it?
Snickersnee. Yep.
Yeah. So I was actually thinking I have something in mind for this word, and I'm pretty sure I've heard it before. And it's a form of a language that was used kind of by Celtics in Ireland and that region that was meant in jest, and it was a new kind of language that developed during that time with a kind of alphabetic format, and that's
that makes a lot of sense, right? It's a snickersnee. It was like, oh, that wasn't just Gaelic, that was snickersnee. We're just messing with you.
Got it.
No, that's good. For those who want to look up the definition, feel free to look it up. I'm not going to say it on here. You got to just go Google it. But Jonathan, if people wanted to, keep in touch with you, what's the best way for them to keep in touch with you, find out when your book's launching officially? How do you want them to reach out?
Yeah, at the moment before the book is launched, because it's not actually available for sale yet, please follow me on Instagram at @Beskin. It's B like boy, E, S like Sam, KIN like Nancy, or on TikTok at Jonathan Beskin. Those are probably the two best places.
Awesome. We can go check out your viral TikToks too. I'm actually going to go do that right after this. Jonathan Beskin, really appreciate you coming out here and talking to us, opening up very honest, heartfelt conversation. And hope you and everybody else out there have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yeah, well, it was great meeting you. And thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Sounds good. See you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Up Arrow podcast with William Harris. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.